This is the Scholarlynk news for 13th January 2021. A Boeing 737 passenger plane carrying 62 people crashed into the sea shortly after takeoff from the Indonesian capital of Jakarta. The Sriwijaya airplane disappeared from radars 4 minutes into its journey to Pontianak. Witnesses said they saw and heard at least one explosion. After retrieving human body parts and suspected pieces of the plane, authorities have now located the black boxes from the doomed passenger plane. The military chief hopes that the black boxes will be recovered soon. This is the first major air crash since 2018 when 189 passengers in a Lion Air Boeing 737 MAX plunged into the Java Sea soon after takeoff. Even without this most recent crash, more people had died in air accidents in Indonesia than in any other country during the last 10 years. Police have asked families to provide dental records and DNA samples to help identify the bodies. Think about it. Would a bad safety record deter you from traveling to and from a country? Personally, if I really had to travel to that country, I would take an airline which has a stellar safety record. But preferably I would not want to travel there at all. China is keen to develop more nuclear power projects as it views these as a way to reach their carbon goals more quickly. They have developed a nuclear fusion reactor that imitates the activity taking place within our sun. China plans to build an experimental reactor this year, followed by an industrial prototype in 2035, and finally entering it into large-scale commercial use by 2050. The country's progress in this area shows that the relevant authorities have mastered the vital technologies for the design, construction, and operation of the device. Analysts believe that with advances through research and development, China will be one of the pioneers in developing nuclear fusion energy. Nuclear fusion is the process whereby two atoms fuse together to form a larger atom, such as when hydrogen atoms combine to form helium. The process releases a large amount of energy. Think about it. How do you think nuclear power compares to renewable sources of energy such as wind and solar? I feel the greatest advantage of nuclear power is that the output will be consistent, unlike such renewable sources as wind and solar. However, probably the biggest consideration whether nuclear fusion power can be a commercial success would be the cost of the energy that it generates as compared to the cost of wind and solar, which are coming down every day. Employees have been encouraged to stay in the city of their workplace for the Spring Festival. It is hoped that they will avoid the travel rush and prevent the spread of the coronavirus. Some cities are also encouraging employees to work through the holiday period to help meet production targets. The incentives include overtime pay, free food, free accommodations, and holidays arranged for a later date. Typically, the Spring Festival travel rush in China is the world's largest human migration as people travel back to their hometowns for family reunions. 407 million passengers are expected to ride the railways, but some are reconsidering their travel plans due to the coronavirus. In addition, some cities are encouraging people to have reunion dinners of not more than 10 people. Think about it. If you were a worker in China away from your hometown, would you still want to go back or will you stay and work? I guess it depends a lot on at what stage of life I'm in. If I were a younger person, I wouldn't mind staying behind to work, get a little extra spending money. But if I were an older gentleman and I had children back home, I would definitely want to go back because this would be one of the few opportunities in the year that I have to see my family. Britain became the first country in Western Europe to report more than 3 million coronavirus cases, with the new strain putting pressure on its health service. This is also the 5th highest caseload in the world. Britain first reported having 1 million cases on October 31st, and this number doubled 7 weeks later. It took just another 3 weeks to increase from 2 million to 3 million cases. The number of deaths due to COVID-19 is also the highest in Europe at more than 80,800. The country is currently under its 3rd national lockdown, closing schools and non-essential businesses. The Mayor of London has also warned that the National Health Service is at risk of being overwhelmed. About 2 million people have already been vaccinated, with around 200,000 getting the shots every day. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has promised to inoculate 15 million elderly and vulnerable people by the middle of February. Think about it. It's plain to see that the rate of infections in Britain is going up. Do you think the current lockdown came too late? I, for one, am in favor of having just one long, painful lockdown and getting the whole situation under control. I don't think it's doing anyone any favors by having a half-hearted lockdown and then people going back thinking that everything is okay, spreading the virus some more, going into another lockdown, stopping that, and people coming out thinking everything is okay again. I'm in favor of one long lockdown, but I guess there were certain circumstances that made them have shorter and more lockdowns. A day after rioters stormed the Capitol building, lawmakers' fear and shock at how easily security in the building had been breached gave way to anger. Many leading lawmakers demanded the Capitol's top security officials to resign and for investigations into why security had failed. There are also questions about why Capitol Police was so understaffed when extremist groups had already telegraphed their intention to disrupt the counting of the electoral votes at the Capitol. The FBI had estimated that as many as 20,000 people might attend the protest, yet federal law enforcement decided to keep the number of heavily armed police or military to a minimum. Already, Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund has announced that he would resign on January 16, followed by the resignation of the House Sergeant-at-Arms and Senate Sergeant-at-Arms. Blame is also placed on President Trump for failing to approve deployment of the DC National Guard. Think about it. Why do you think there was so much less law enforcement personnel on standby this time as compared to the Black Lives Matter protests? If you ask me, I think it's because no one could have imagined that a sitting president, or any president for that matter, would have asked his people to attack a federal building. And the process was largely ceremonial, and I think that's why no one really expected anyone to attack it and why there were only minimal security forces on hand at that time. This brings us to the end of today's edition of the Scholarlynk News. We hope you enjoyed the reports and our discussions. Please subscribe and click on the bell icon to be notified of our new videos, and we will see you in our next video.